Hi everyone, Peter Liciaga here with episode 2 on this series that I'm doing. And basically, what I want to do is just speak to parents in our community, share with you what I've learned over my years. And I know the last episode, the last video that we went through, I just introduced you to my family and to my mom, my dad, and just gave you guys just an idea of what I've learned from my mom and my dad, and my respect that I have for them, and how I'm doing this in a way just to really to pay homage to them, and just to celebrate their lives and what they've taught me. But again, for me, family is everything. And as a martial arts instructor at Donato Karate Center in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, there's reasons why I do what I do, why I stopped performing, came here, wanted to raise a family, and then go full time into martial arts. And family for me is everything. It's all about family. And I'm at that place in my life where I'm thinking of legacy. I'm thinking of what am I going to be remembered for, and who's going to remember me? It's going to be my family, my children, my children's children, and into future generations. What's pretty cool is that this video, it has the potential to be seen by my great 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 grandchildren in the future, which is pretty cool. And so this is a way for them to really look back and see a part of where they came from and how they came to be where they are, maybe learn something. So that's pretty awesome. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about what I want to talk about in this particular episode. My journey. I'm going to share my journey, and I know it's the story that I know the best. In my story, and I know you have a journey, you have a story, we all have a journey, and everyone has a story, everyone has a journey. So the question is, what's your journey? What's your story? I hope that as I introduce myself to you and my story to you, and I share what I've learned so far in my journey, that you'll share along the way your story, parts of your story, your journey, what you've learned so far. But more importantly, I want to talk about what you can do, what your child's story would be, and what their journey would be or could be. And as we move forward, what we can do to help them along. Because as parents, that's one thing. We talked about, how our number one thing that everyone wants really is just to be happy, to enjoy our lives, and to see our children be happy. But we also know that there's challenges in the world, that there's going to be the ups and downs in life. And so my hope is with this series is to share what I've learned, and what I show you what I've done on my journey. Hopefully, hear from you guys what you've done on your journey, what you've learned on your journey. And in this episode, I'm going to share something to you that I learned recently that I want to call a hero's journey, because I believe that our journey is a hero's journey. Parents' journey is a hero's journey. That we are living a hero's journey. And are we perfect? No. Do we make mistakes? Yes. But we make a lot of great choices. Sometimes we don't even know it. And we see the results of that. Sometimes we won't. And it's not until we come to the end of our journey that we can then look back and see how our journey, everything fits in and made sense. And I really do believe that it makes sense. And I think of my grandfather and his journey, his life, 98 years. My mom, her life, my dad's life. Everyone that I've known and have passed on. When they pass on, then I can look back as best as possible and see their journey, their life, and then everything they did, how it might have made sense. I know surely for me. Now, my journey started in the Bronx. I started in New York. Of course, now I live in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Many of you guys know me as a martial arts instructor in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, but I started my life in the Bronx. And the Bronx wasn't easy growing up in the Bronx. I grew up with the gangs, the violence, and I found a very short video that will give you guys an idea of what I grew up on. So let me go ahead and play that for you guys.
I was born and raised in the Bronx. At one time, the Bronx was a thriving community. towards the end of the 60s, that started to change. Businesses moved out. Crime moved in. People were left with an overwhelming sense of fear and hopelessness.
No job opportunity, shop owners leaving. Just imagine World War II bombed out Berlin.
It was considered the worst ghetto in all of the United States.
Now, I'll tell you, growing up in the Bronx, I definitely felt that the world was like this. So I definitely felt the fear, I felt the hopelessness, and this is what I grew up in. And that was reality for me as a child. And I have to be honest, as a child, living in this and then seeing what was going on in my own family, I really thought that's all there was. That's it. That was it. This was life. This was it. And so there was this fear every time I went out into the streets. There was a fear. Of course, I created this this part of me that was survival. That's it. Only strong would survive, and so I was a fighter, and I knew I had to fight to get what I wanted and to survive. And there was that hopelessness that I sensed as I was, living in the city. So there definitely along the way, and I'll share this later on, along the way where I had this big aha moment where I realized, gosh, is this all there is, or is there more? And there was a part of me that always felt like there was something more. And I believe that's why I became this warrior, this fighter, that I continued to fight. No matter what was going on, I knew I needed to get out. There were moments where I wanted to give up, but I always ended up fighting through. And probably why martial arts really resonated with me, because I started martial arts when I was 9, when it was introduced to me, that it fit well for me because it helped me to be a better and more effective fighter. But I want to talk about a hero's journey and how this, my mindset started evolving and changing. I knew I wanted to get out. I knew that I wanted to change my situation, but I didn't know how. So what tended to happen was people and things came up, and I made better choices, didn't know what I was to do. But what I want to talk about is this hero's journey. And I was introduced to a book several weeks ago by Joseph Campbell called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Now, when I discovered this book, I started reflecting on my experiences, my experiences in the Bronx and traveling around the U.S. when I became a performing artist, when I left the Bronx and ended up down in Florida, then came back to New York when I got introduced to ballet and then musical theater. I started traveling around the world and then traveling in Canada, Japan. Went out to Japan when my wife was out there, all over Europe, been to England. So I traveled around the world. And then I did keep journals. I wrote journals during this time, and it amazed me that what I read in this book, when I see of what Joseph Campbell wrote based on his research. And now this book was written in 1949, and Joseph Campbell was a literature professor at Sarah Lawrence, and he's since passed away. But this book, it made connections with me and patterns of my life and events that happened in my life, that it really showed that I was on this hero's journey. And I want to share that with you because I believe through this journey, looking at what Joseph Campbell wrote about and this journey that he spoke about, it helps me as a teacher when I help parents to help their children. And I want to show you that. I want to go as quick as possible through this because there's a lot here, and I'm going to unpack it, but I'm going to go quickly right now through it because I know, my next episode, episode 3, I want to share exactly how I see how this is going to help us as parents, and my role, as a teacher, as a martial arts instructor, can help parents in this journey. So it starts off in this journey where there's this ordinary world which is what I would call home. He says an ordinary world, and then what he would call a special world. This world when you're home, and then eventually, we have to go out into the real, what I call the real world, the special world that can be dark and dangerous. But it starts off where he says is the status quo, where moms, dads, the family, we're all at home. We're in this space. Mom has, you have children, and then the children are born, and we're all living in this home that's safe, and it's what we would consider our ordinary home, our safety, where everything is safe for the most part. The kids feel safe. They get fed. They get their clothing. They get their home. They're fed. Okay, and then we are all called to action. There's this adventure that we start feeling, and we parents, we know that we have to leave home, but we have this sense that we have to leave home, that we're not going to stay home forever. We know that our children are going to grow up because they're called to go out into the world. They go out and make their mark, to become adults, to work, and then to maybe raise a family and start their own lives. So there's that call to action, call to adventure. And then along the way, you're going to get assistance. You're going to get guides, mentors, people that are going to come into your life, lessons you're going to learn, from experiences. So you're going to be given assistance and guide. And of course, we parents are there helping them along the way, but friends will get in there. They'll meet people, and that will assist them. They'll learn from. And then the departure comes, where they get to that point, to that threshold where they're going to leave home. And then they go into the real world. They get out into the real world, where there's trials, there's challenges, there are obstacles that they have to overcome, that we have to overcome. We have to work through, fight through, pray through. And then we get to this place where we approach our most scariest challenge, the challenge that we believe, the obstacle that we believe that we cannot overcome, that we are so fearful of, but we know we must confront it. And then we confront it, and then we get to that place where it becomes a crisis, where it's a life and death situation. And where, like for me, there was that moment when I was in the Bronx, where I was out there, and I knew I was approaching this moment in my life that was a crisis for me. It was a life or death situation for me. And I remember I was around, maybe 11 or 12 years old. Both my brother and I were running with a gang, and what we would do would go out and rob people. And one of the things that we would do we would snatch purses. And so there was this time that my brother and I, the gang, we chose that my brother and I were going to go out and snatch a purse. It was late at night, and so we worked it out where I was going to snatch the purse, and my brother was going to be on the other side of the street. And the way it worked, one would be on one side of the street, one would be on the other side of the street where the person who we targeted was. And so I was the one that was going to take the purse. So we found our target. It was a senior citizen. It was an old lady. And then we start walking up to them, start running, and then you would grab the purse, snatch the purse, and then just run. And so, let me just get rid of this here, which is what I did. I started running. My brother was running on the other side, and the agreement was that after I snatched the purse, we would meet at the projects, at a basement in the projects. And so I ran up to the lady, grabbed the purse, and she just started screaming. And as I ran, her screaming in the background, I remember hearing her scream and the fear that I had. And I remember I started crying, how horrible I felt doing what I had done. And then before I knew it, there were police cars chasing me. There was 2 or 3 police cars. I was running through neighborhoods, jumping over fences. And I just remember crying and in fear and running and just extremely upset. And I remember running, saying to myself, this is not what I wanted. And in that moment, I knew this was not the life for me. This was a crisis. I knew that at that moment it was a life and death for me, but I did not know what I was going to do. But I knew this was not what I wanted. Now, I met with my brother, and everyone laughed, and I joined in on the laughter. But deep down inside, I knew this was the end of this life that I was on, this path that I was on. So to me, that was a crisis. So we have crises like this in our lives, going into the real world, and we're confronted with that. So that was a crisis. The next thing is the treasure, the reward. Once you go through the crisis and you survive the crisis, I survived this, and for me the reward was this determination that I knew this was not the path for me. I had no idea what I was going to do next, or how I was going to get myself out of this situation, the gangs and the streets, but I knew that's not where I wanted to be. And for me, this was an aha moment. At 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, I knew. And for me, this wisdom that I had at such a young age was my reward. And as you move forward, going through this real world, the result of that, I started making different changes. I started not hanging out, started training more. I started getting more into just looking for ways I could improve myself. And then, of course, when I returned back home, when we get back home, there's, you get comfortable, you get this sense of a new life because of your experience, and then you are resolved that no matter what, you're going to keep moving, you're going to grow. You grow from this, and of course, as a hero, you feel stronger, and I felt empowered. And then now there's that new status quo, that there's a newness. You're at home in this ordinary world back, and then now, because you've experienced this, you're more empowered. And I was more empowered. There was a lot to learn. There's a lot to go through. And this is a cycle you go through and continue. It's an ongoing cycle. And so starts with the separation, coming out from where you used to and descending into this real world, this special world, the darkness, the dangers, whatever is there for you, and then going through it, going through your ordeal, whatever that is, and then returning back to where you were initially, your home. That could be anywhere, but some place that you're comfortable with becomes your status quo, but you come back stronger. And this is what I call the hero's journey. The hero's journey. Now, in episode 3, I want to show you parents how, as parents, we can empower our kids, give our kids skills that they can be better equipped. Because one thing my parents didn't do for me, they did not prepare me for the world, not directly. I learned I saw what they were doing through the abuse, through their poor choices. I knew I didn't want that, but there was no one really there directly guiding and directing me and sharing life skills, life lessons with me. I had to learn all this along the way. And I want to show you parents what you can do, when you can do that. What can we do? Skills can we share and pass on to our children to prepare them for the world that we know that they are going into, because they will be separated from us. Whether we want that or not, there's going to be that separation, and there's going to be this descent. They're going to go into the real world. What skills can we pass on to them? Yes, we have our core values that we'll pass on, our beliefs, we pass that on, but what more can we pass on? I want to share what I believe that we can pass on. That's what I passed on to my own children, and I'm confident that they can go into the real world, and I've done all that I can to equip them with key things, and I want to share that with you in our next episode. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really do appreciate it. Look forward to hearing your comments and your feedback. And other than that, guys, you have a great day. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. You know how to get a hold of me. You could just comment below, or you could email me at peterliciaga@gmail.com, or just go to Facebook or Instagram and direct message me. Other than that, you guys have a great day. I'll see you next time.